Hello everyone and welcome back to the new news. My name is Paul and I'm going to be your host for the day. I hope everyone is doing well today. I hope everyone is safe and I hope that your families are also safe. I know there's been a lot of unrest and turmoil in the world today, especially in the country of Ukraine. So if you want to check out the description below on this video, whether you're looking live or if you're watching afterwards, then you'll see that there are plenty of different donation links that you can go to. If you want to support the war effort in Ukraine, you can go to Come Back Alive. They are a great organization. They specifically fund part of the war effort. They were started in 2014 after the annexation of Crimea, and they actually go through and they buy body armor and equipment, sights, optics for Ukrainian forces, the foreign legions operating in the country. And then if you want to donate to the humanitarian side of things, then there's plenty of different organizations in there. We have things such as the World Central Kitchen, which just recently, a couple days ago, delivered 6,000 kilograms of food inside of Bucha and Irpin. They also cooked 600 hot meals. And so please check out those donation links below. Helps raise some money for great organizations who are trying to do good in the world. There's enough bad going on in the world. The least we could do is put a little bit of good in it. And if you can't donate a lot, if you can't give a lot, give a little. Everything helps. And these are, we've vetted these to make sure that that money is actually going to go towards helping people. And so, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the news going on inside the world today, starting with our main focus, and it's been the main focus for everyone for over a month at this point. We're coming up quickly on a month and a half, where it's the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has been extremely brutal. It has been long. It has been drawn out, and it has seen absolute atrocities that the world really hasn't seen since the end of World War II. This is warfare on a scale that is almost incomprehensible even to veterans, men and women who have gone over and fought in places such as Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq, places all over the globe. This level of destruction is something that's very hard to comprehend, and these level of atrocities that we have seen. If you want to go ahead and check out here, an American volunteer in Kyiv, currently he was fighting. We know the foreign legions were operating to the northwest of Kyiv. Some of them appear to have gone in for rest and refit in Kyiv today. One of them is an American volunteer named James Vasquez. Today, he released a video. He's a drone operator inside of the American Foreign Legion there. And today, there's a video of him pleading for international assistance. This is based on the fact that what he is seeing in the country doesn't necessarily always line up with what is being said by the international community. The weapons and stuff that they need, that doesn't seem like they're getting, and he wanted to make that clear. He is a little bit of vulgar, so a little bit of discretion there. He is a rather vulgar person, but I cannot blame him. This would be very frustrating for myself if I was in his position, and I'm sure you'd feel the same way. So let's go ahead, give him a listen.
Okay, this is truly a plea for help. This is my AK-47. My AK-47 has an ACOG scope on it. It has a reflex sight on top. I provided all this. I bought it. I bought it for my whole team. I bought my front rails. I had somebody custom make the suppressor in the front. I've done this all on my own. Government or Ukraine has not provided anything except for a naked weapon. Okay. I'm going into battle with this. 1, 2, 3 magazines and 1 grenade. Everybody else has 5.45 because most people use AK-74s here. I'm one of the few that has AK-47 with 7.62 rounds. Can't find them anywhere. Can't get another magazine. They expect me to go in battle with all this bullshit and just my drones, AK-47, and one grenade and nothing else. I don't know where all these weapons are supposed to be coming in from all the rest of our governments. I haven't seen an M16. I haven't seen an M4. I haven't seen anything that really I can use, that I know I can reliably use. Please fucking help and stop saying that you're sending shit and actually send it.
He's very blunt and to the point there, and you can tell that he's rather frustrated. And that is understandably so. Nations across the world, the United States, France, Germany, basically any country in NATO, as well as many other nations that aren't even part of the NATO alliance, have said that they will be sending weapons. They continue to send weapons. We do know some stuff has arrived in the country of Ukraine. We know things like the Javelin, the In-Law, the Panzer, the newest version of the Panzerfaust. We know that former Soviet stockpiles have arrived in the country. However, some of the things that are needed by just everyday individuals for the fight, such as 7.62 by 3.9 ammunition, which is used for the AK-47, 5.54, 5.45, which is used by the AK-74. Two of the most common weapons in the region, former Soviet stockpiles, once again, have not reached, it seems, the country, at least enough that it's actually getting to the people that need it the most. Today, coming out of Bucha, out of the Bucha European hostile area, the coroner's office there in Bucha has said that out of all of the bodies that they have discovered and examined thus far, only 12% have either died of shrapnel or other injuries resulting in explosions, meaning they died during the shelling or the bombing of the area by either side. They said that at least 75% of victims so far their cause of death was identified as a gunshot wound, whether that means that they were someone who was summarily executed, much like the pictures that we have seen that have horrified and shocked the globe, or whether that was just individuals who were caught in the crossfire during the fighting. 75% of the victims in the Bucha area have been identified, that have been examined thus far, have been killed by gunshot wounds, which means that someone physically had to essentially see these individuals and almost to an extent target these individuals to kill them. So there is currently ongoing inquiries by the International Criminal Court, the UN Humanitarian Rights Council, and other international agencies to conduct third-party investigations into the atrocities ongoing in the region. It is difficult. However, since Russian forces are no longer in the area, they have withdrawn. Hopefully, they will be able to continue to collect evidence that is not from either side, either warring party, and then hopefully we can get some international support behind the fact that these atrocities occurred. That isn't just photographs and evidence that there are people that are claiming, especially in Russia, that were staged. So, moving on, it's a little bit of older news. There was a Russian jet that was shot down over Borodyanka on April 3rd. Today, we are getting evidence out of Borodyanka of that jet. And there's not really much of a jet left.
Он в чехле даже не раскрылся. Это из заголовника выпал. Вот, так что здесь он тоже весь со стойки. Вот это вот. Короче, дали. Салют был хороший. Вот. Погорело все. Тут вон от движка тоже часть лежит, компрессор. Сейчас пойдем посмотрим. Вот эта стоечка. Ось. Вот. Заборник. Это тоже есть такое дело. Короче, бесславный конец всего. Сейчас движок посмотрим.
Now, we do understand that this is a little bit older news. However, confirming downed aircraft is very important. Russia has not been very forthcoming with their losses. We believe that pretty much everyone at this point believes that they are purposely not releasing their losses to prevent international outcry, to prevent mass unrest in their own country, which they're already having issues with, and so on and so forth. We believe a lot of these numbers are doctored. There was reports early on in the war that mobile crematoriums were following Russian troops around to kind of hide the evidence of their losses. And so we just want to make sure that there is some video evidence is out here on the internet now that confirms another Russian jet that was destroyed, regardless of if it was on April 3rd or if it was today. So on top of that, however, President Zelensky also stated today that the situation in Borodyanka is much worse than what was found in Bucha. This comes after cleanup crews that have reached the area now and have begun to sift through the debris, found 26 bodies buried under the rubble of at least, I believe it was only 2 buildings in the city. So it's believed that many other people are buried underneath the rubble of what's left of Borodyanka. We have showed over the past several days, we've showed a lot of footage that just shows the level of destruction in the city, which is, it looks something similar to almost like Mariupol, where the city is almost completely destroyed. Most of it's just gone, burned out. It will have to be demolished. And there is still a lot of cleanup left to do. There's still a lot of horrifying and gruesome discoveries to be found. However, in a little bit lighter news as we continue going forward, Ivankiv, which is a village north, has now received the Tesla Starlink internet system. This area has been under Russian occupation, and the survivors in this area were actually seen today using that system. So they're currently reaching out to their friends and families to let them know that they're okay, they're alive, they're well. And to also kind of reconnect with the outside world since they've been isolated under the Russian occupation this entire time. So it's good to see that, one, a lot of these people look very healthy. They look like they haven't bore witness to the worst of the worst, like we were seeing in Bucha and Borodyanka and Irpin. It looks like their occupation went a little bit easier, at least from how they look, and that they're looking healthy. So that's good, and it's good that they're able to reach out to their friends and families and let them know they are alive, they are well, and they can see what else is going on that they haven't been able to find out for well over a month now. In similar news, we've reported on this a little bit. We reported on it when it was supposedly Russian troops had left the area of Chernobyl, specifically because they had dug trenches in the Red Forest, which is one of the most irradiated places on the planet. And they apparently went up into Belarus, and currently at least one is supposed to have died so far. 75 others have severe radiation sickness. We saw drone footage yesterday confirming they did in fact dig these trenches in the area of the Red Forest. Like idiots, we saw this drone footage, and today nuclear specialists and Ukrainian forces did go to the site. They were actually using dosimeters to test the radiation levels in the area, which are currently sitting higher than normal. And so we actually have a video of that today. I apologize for the footage.
Да, вот он. Он же
там как раз мышей этих селили.
Оно и горело.
Давайте к нам.
Чуєте? От зараз виміряємо радіаційний фон, він вже пищить, показує перевищення. От місце, де російські військовослужбовці в забрудненій території рили окопи, от, ну, як видно, для людей, от, для важкої техніки, для танків або інших важких машин. Дуже багато рили.
Дуже багато їх залишків від їжі. Вони тут і жили в цьому лісі. І багато поспалювали.
На мешке написано, мешки даже российские с собой привозили. Узкий ПХЛ какой-то.
Собачек не проверяли?
Бесполезно, прибор сломается.
Не, это наш.
So we do know for a fact it's been visited by Ukrainian troops. We've seen the footage. We heard the rumors long before even Ukrainian forces took control of the Chernobyl area again that they had dug trenches in this area. It's confirmed, and that means that at this point, more than likely, with all of the evidence we've seen so far, we've heard rumors before of certain things. We heard rumors about the atrocities going on down in Bucha and Irpin. Obviously, the rumors did not do justice to really what was going on. We heard rumors of similar things in Mariupol and many other areas, and they were later confirmed. Likewise, it's probably it's safe to say that the Russian troops are in Belarus receiving treatment for radiation sickness. I'm sure those rumors do have at least a grain of truth to them, much like we have seen in the past with the trend. The rumors start, they're confirmed by the Ukrainian side. Russia denies it. It's later confirmed through video evidence and third parties. So moving on, there has not been a lot going on in Chernihiv and Sumy. The Russian forces have all withdrawn from these areas. They are still going through and taking their time in liberating them. There has been some rumors as well in this area that there are similar atrocities to what happened in Bucha, where there has not been any evidence that has come forth as a result. So with that, we haven't reported on anything in this area because we haven't seen it yet. Just hearing things on the messaging boards and the sources that we have, we will probably see some evidence of those atrocities here in the coming days as these areas become more and more liberated and they push further north. Kharkiv hasn't had a lot of developments lately. One of the things we have seen, however, is there was a massive explosion in Vashishiv, which is a village just outside of Kharkiv. It's a massive explosion. We have a couple of videos of both during the explosion and after the explosion, so we can go ahead and take a look.
Ебануться, блядь! Ебануться, блядь!
Центр Ващева, смотрите, что творят пидорасы. Вот церковь. Вот забор повыносило. Вот какая яма осталась. Смотрите. Яма 2,5 метра. Вот церковь, что творится. Что творится рядом. Вот здание. Окон нет, все повыносило. Стены целые. Окон нет. Нихуя. Вот какая яма. Вот что с церковью. Нараву, говорят, въебало в бугор.
Now, we don't know what it was, but as you can clearly see in that video, it left a pretty deep hole, and it was pretty large of an explosion. We don't know if anyone was injured or killed. However, it doesn't appear as though they were. And also, it's worth pointing out, I didn't see any military targets in that area. And so I ask you as an audience, did you? Because I did not. I did not see anything that confirms any kind of military targets in that area at all. This also comes as we're learning continually that Russia is preparing and has been conducting further offensives here in the east and the south. They are more here in the east in Luhansk, Donetsk, really the Donbas region as a whole, and Kharkiv region. We have seen a very large amount of intensified fighting, shelling, bombing in these areas. We do know that there is supposedly about 6 Russian attacks that were actually pushed back by Ukraine today in the region. There wasn't any footage that we could find from our sources showing that, but we did hear reports that occurred. So another very grave kind of concerning thing, these large explosions happening in civilian centers with no objective. Does not seem to be any military objective. There is not any military targets in them. We saw bombings yesterday in the Luhansk region where they were bombing, and there were civilians in the video, and they were bombing a city street. We saw off of CCTV footage. So we know that there's not really any military objective in, not just to look at it in a militarily objective way. You're causing civilian casualties. Sure, that's against the Geneva Convention, but you're also wasting valuable munitions. We know that the Russian logistics is absolutely terrible. And we'll get to that a little bit later. We have some pretty interesting evidence of it. But as a military commander, you're wasting valuable resources that could be used against enemy forces that you're using against civilian targets. So, as a military mindset, it doesn't make sense, and as just a moral compass mindset, it also still doesn't make sense, because you're hitting civilian targets, causing civilian casualties. However, that's not the only news we have today. We have video evidence today that it is possible that Russian forces used incendiary munitions in the village of Popasna in the Luhansk region against Ukrainian forces. Now, you are allowed to use incendiary munitions in warfare. It is permitted. However, you cannot use them against infantry. You cannot use them on people. You can use them on depots, fuel depots, ammo depots, oil depots. You can use them against those because they light things on fire, and that stuff burns really well when it blows up, but you can't use them on people. You can use it to screen. The U.S. military uses white phosphorus to create smoke clouds in order to hide friendly movements. It's what is used to generate that distinctive white smoke when used for artillery. That's white phosphorus. You can't use it on people, though. That is a war crime. There have been prosecutions on it. And so we can see that in this video that they may be using that or similar types of munitions against people. So let's take a look. One of the reasons we think that these are incendiary munitions, one, you can see that a fire has broken out back here, and that there's a lot of smoke coming off of that. But also, white phosphorus, when it is burning, it burns at several thousand degrees Fahrenheit, and it burns in this very blatant white chunks almost. And so that is kind of what we're seeing here as you watch the video. Some of them are kind of have this yellow tinge, but you can see here how it has a really bright white tinge as it's coming down. So that is very concerning. And what gives this video its title? In Luhansk, the government has said that now, at this point, since the Russian invasion, not a single medical facility in the entire Luhansk region has not been hit by Russian shelling. Every single medical facility has been bombed or shelled by Russian forces in the Luhansk region. We've heard about them bombing schools. We've heard them about bombing hospitals. We've seen them bomb hospitals, maternity hospitals. We've seen them shoot at maternity hospitals. We've seen and heard the Russians do everything, but it is so bad that just like in the north yesterday when we said no village spared, no hospital spared in Luhansk. People can't even go get medical treatment because they are just as likely to be targeted at the hospital as they were at their own house. So at this point, where do you go? If you are hurt, where do you go? Because there's nobody that can save you, because there's nowhere for you to go to be saved. Now, as you can probably tell, I am getting frustrated. I have gotten frustrated over the past several days since we have begun to do this, especially with Bucha and Irpin. And something that we always do is we try to remain unbiased. And when we do have biases, we plainly state them on this news channel. And that's just because a lot of places don't. They have biases, but they claim to be unbiased. We claim that we try to be unbiased, but we recognize that we're people too. All of us are. Everyone that volunteers and helps put this together every day. We're all people and we all have biases. And this kind of stuff, the atrocities that you've seen, the bombing of medical facilities, the absolute deplorable things done in Mariupol, even that we're hearing from rape victims of at least some of which are no older than 10 years old that escaped Mariupol, got to Zaporizhia and are receiving medical treatment now because they have physical trauma from being raped by Russian forces. And it's at this point that I have to claim that, yes, we do have a bias here. And the bias is that we are pro-Ukrainian. Whether or not it started out that way doesn't matter. What matters is what we have seen since we started. So I want to make that very clear. We are, and I will make this very clear now, we are very pro-Ukrainian because I cannot find a single moral reason to support any of the things I have seen or heard, whether it has been aired here, and even more importantly, the stuff that did not air, because it was so deplorable, wretched, and brutal that I could not put it on YouTube. So, I wanted to make that clear. I wanted to vent a little bit. I'm sorry if that is something you guys do not enjoy, but it needed to be said. So with that, we're going to continue on here. But yes, there are no more medical facilities remaining in the Luhansk region. But you can see here several different bombed facilities. Once again, this is coming from one of our Ukrainian sources. We have seen it happen over time. We've seen it happen before. We've seen schools getting bombed. And so it's at this point, it's nothing new. It's just the scale of it is now more evident than ever. As we go south into Mariupol, there has been several developments today. some very kind of interesting ones. There isn't necessarily a lot of information coming out of Mariupol. It's very limited. The city is still under siege. However, we do know it has not been taken thus far. And the first thing we do is a little bit of comedy today. The Chechens, also known as the Kadyrovites, but the Chechens who are there supposedly to be the really brutal, the real big force multiplier that Russia is using in the area, have been used as nothing but propaganda, hence why we call them the TikTok army. They released another video today of propaganda, some of which you can see people, they're in a quote-unquote street fighting, urban fighting. Meanwhile, there's other Kadyrovites and civilians in the city who are in the occupied areas who are just casually walking around because there's no actual danger. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look. I am going to keep the sound off because they do have one of those Kadyrovite chants that they have in the background that I believe is copyrighted. So we're going to go ahead and keep that quiet. But you can just take a look and just look in the background. The fighting up front is all just propaganda. But if you watch the background, it's kind of interesting. So just take a look. So as you can see when the video slowed down there, there's just a couple guys along this wall. You can see them when their heads poked by the windows there. They just, yeah, there's one right there. Yeah, he's just casually walking down the street. There's nothing going on. We've seen them persecute doors, empty buildings. I've never actually seen the Chechens fight a single time this entire war. It's been a month and a half. They've had every opportunity in the world. Russia has manpower shortages right now in their military, and they still don't want to use the Chechens. I don't know if they just suck that bad or what's going on, but it's pretty interesting to be sure. And so something coming in from the chat right now is the fact that he's hearing that there are currently still active Ukrainian tanks in Mariupol. I have not heard that, but I would not be surprised. The Azov battalions and the Marine battalions that are currently defending the city of Mariupol currently are sitting at about a 40 to 50 kilometer wide front. They have been able. The whole city is a giant steel area. I mean, me and some of the other volunteer staff members were talking last night about this. And the whole area is a giant steel mill, basically. The whole city is. And everything in a steel mill is super thick because that has to be heated to astronomical temperatures. So it's essentially all bulletproof. So I would not be surprised if there's some places they can just park a couple tanks in their buildings and not have to worry about Russian strikes or anything, because what's going to punch through the 3 foot thick of solid steel that's sitting above them, basically. So something pretty interesting. But yes, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure there are rumors. I'm sure there's some truth to them. There has been some concerning rumors coming out of Mariupol that they have run out of things such as guided anti-tank weapons and etc. However, we've also heard rumors that there may be some way that troops in Mariupol are still getting at least limited resupply, We don't know if that's true. We don't know how. We don't know how that's working out at all, if it's even happening. But there has been some limited reports on it coming out of the area. So we'll have to see how that goes, but I wouldn't be surprised if they all do still have armored vehicles. We do know that they're still maintaining their ground here. Moving on a little bit, a little bit of interesting photography work here. We can see that that they just don't make them like they used to. This cabinet has been through absolute hell. The entire building has collapsed around it, and yet it sits there holding the dishes. The whole area has been burned, collapsed, destroyed, shelled, and it just still hangs there. Just like the day it was put up. They just don't make shit like they used to. They really don't. So, it's an interesting thing to see from the city. It shows just this, people lived here. People lived in these cities, in these apartments that are so burned and battered. The last we heard, 90% of the city was destroyed. And the mayor and the city council of Mariupol did say at least 5,000 civilians have been killed at this point. The estimates put it at between 5 and 10,000 civilian casualties in the city. We don't know for a fact. We won't know until it's over and until the city is liberated, the true extent of destruction. There were reports yesterday that mobile crematoriums had come into the city. That was confirmed by Mariupol City Council. Likewise, it was reported and confirmed by the Ukrainian government. Russia denies this, but we believe it's to cover up war crimes after the recent international outcry that was coming from places such as Bucha and Irpin, because Mariupol is expected to be a million times worse than anything we've seen yet once the fighting is over. However, to build upon what we had talked about a little bit earlier, we do know that the Ukrainian forces in Mariupol are still fighting. They continue to fight on. And we actually have a video here to show regarding that. So we do know that they are still fighting, which is good to see. It's good to see that that everything down here, like the Azov battalions and then the Marine battalions, are holding their ground. There are some estimates and kind of some theories as to who is operating here. We know the Kadarovites, of course, the Chechens are operating. We know that DPR forces, those separatists, are operating here. There's also apparently Russian naval infantry here in the northern part, as well as some different Russian military units. There's like 6 or 7 different forces fighting against what's essentially 3 groups of Ukrainians in the city. And they are still holding on. I don't think Russia really expected the kind of resistance they were facing in the country, let alone especially in Mariupol, where still over a month later, they're tying up Russian forces in this entire sector. These forces can't be used anywhere else, because if they pull them off of Mariupol, they may never take the city. And they may never take the city as is, let alone if they pull forces away from it. And those forces are badly needed if they want to make any ground in the north, because we've seen Ukraine forces push south towards Mariupol. Up here, there were some counteroffensives that were successful. So we know that this line can't hold entirely. We know it's weakened. We know they're losing ground near Kherson. We've seen reports, and we've seen what the Russians are doing. They don't expect to hold the city of Kherson. They have prepped and moved equipment and mined bridges accordingly, specifically for retreating from Kherson and this entire area and pulling back towards Crimea. So we know that they're having issues along all of these fronts, minus where they're currently bolstering forces. So the troops down here are badly needed, and they just can't. They probably will never break the Ukrainian will to fight. I do not believe Mariupol is going to fall anytime soon, simply because they've outlasted everyone else's predictions. And so I'm not even going to put one on there, because at this point, I think there's probably something going on that means that they won't fall. They will not fall. They will probably be alone and unafraid down here, and they will probably continue to tie up Russian forces for the remainder of the war until they're finally liberated. And last but not least, inside the country of Ukraine, because we haven't gotten any more information coming out of Zaporizhia or Kherson or Mykolaiv. However, Odessa is reportedly being shelled. There is currently a law in the city that you cannot post videos and photos of shellings and explosions online right now. This is because they do not want to have the Russians looking for these things, so that way they can use the videos being posted by the citizens themselves to adjust their fire so they can actually hit the targets they want to hit. So they have banned videos and photos coming out of that area, and we're not seeing a lot of video evidence. However, it's purported today that there were some impacts, explosions, and that these were being fired by the Russian naval fleet, which is currently blockading the port city itself. We can't confirm that. We can't see the video evidence, but that is what we're hearing out of the area. And so for those that come here and join specifically for the Ukrainian section of the video, we do still have some things to deal with Ukraine a little bit, but that wraps up the portion of the video that focuses on inside of the country. There was not necessarily a lot of information that we could confirm independently today. There was a lot of rumors. There's a lot of things kind of flying around right now. There are some things in the works, but haven't necessarily come to fruition yet. There's things that have been reported that have no video or photo evidence to back them. So it's become a little bit limited. I think part of it is there are Ukrainian counteroffensives. We don't want to show their positions because that would give the Russians something to target, which we've seen them do. But at the same time, I think it's been a month and a half, and at this point, people are really tired of it. A lot of stuff we see is stuff that has no location. We can't tell where it's at, because a lot of this stuff it has to be reported where it's at, otherwise no one knows. A lot of it isn't geotagged, so it's very difficult to find, and there are very intelligent individuals in the world that are looking, but I think for the most part people are really tired of it. They're tired of reporting on the same stuff every day. They're tired of posting nothing but videos of tragedy and atrocity and just terror every day, and I can't say I blame them at all. But there are still people who are coming forth with this video. It's good to see it, and it really gives those of us that live internationally, whether or not we have personal stakes in Ukraine, and understanding what's truly going on. And that's very important that the world sees. So with that, we wrap up the Ukrainian portion. We're going to go ahead and move on to the international news. But we're going to start here in Belarus. And that's because in Belarus, safety first. I was talking about how Russians were having supply issues earlier and why it just doesn't make sense that they still bomb cities when they're having such bad logistics issues, because they're wasting valuable ammunition. And today we can see that Russians have no problem transporting ammunition, apparently, in a very safe and secure manner. A very, very OSHA compliant safe and secure manner. So this is a dump truck that has been commandeered by Russian forces that they threw a crap ton of main gun ammo for an infantry fighting vehicle into. There's a bunch of cannon rounds, and they just dumped it in the back of this dump truck and are taking it down the road. Very, very OSHA compliant, very safe and secure. They definitely are not having logistics issues. We can tell you that. They are transporting ammo. So that was something interesting to see today. We do know that they were commandeering vehicles earlier in the war. Based on battalion tactical group assets and how they are made up, they actually didn't even start the war with enough vehicles to supply them. And they were short by like 1,500 to 2,000 trucks to actually supply the forces they were putting in. They only had enough for 2/3 of their invasion force. Fuel and logistics trucks. And you've seen a ton of those get destroyed. They had to commandeer. We saw them being put in on flatbed train cars and being brought into Belarus and into areas of Russia. But that's not the only news, however. As we go over here to Bryansk, Russia has moved their aircraft from areas inside of Belarus, a significant number of their aircraft, might I add, to a base located in Bryansk, which is north of Kursk and along this kind of northeastern border. And we actually have some satellite imagery today that outlines this. So very interesting news that they're moving aircraft once again. Not quite sure why. I'm sure it has to deal with not having to fly over Ukrainian-held territory when they're conducting their strikes. Because the air over Ukraine is still considered contested. There's too much ground fire, active and accurate ground fire. And the Ukrainian Air Force is still operating. We don't see a lot of videos of that because they have very limited aircraft. But we do know that the Ukrainian Air Force is still operating and the skies over Ukraine are contested still. So, very important note there. And moving on to Germany, an Islamic State field commander was detained in Germany today. He fled the country of Syria after he is accused of the torturing of at least 3 people and participating in the massacre of an entire village in Deir ez-Zor province. He fled to Germany, posing as a refugee from the war in Syria, and German intelligence officials actually arrested him today. And Azerbaijan and Armenia's governments both said today that their foreign ministry departments are now instructed to negotiate a peace agreement between the two nations. Two nations have been at war and have had hostilities between them. We've actually seen weapons and equipment being found along the border region and being confiscated by Azerbaijani police. However, there doesn't seem to be very much intense and active fighting within the region. For the most part, the war seems to be rather quiet, similar to kind of a Cold War circumstance between the two nations. And now, hopefully, they will be able to broker a peace agreement, and they can go about living their lives and rebuilding and forming some kind of a mutually beneficial relationship between the two nations going forward. However, more violence continues in Israel. We have seen things such as in Hadera, where there was a terror attack, Tel Aviv, where there was a terror attack. We've seen that there was a summit between multiple nations. We've seen violence in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And today there was another terror attack that killed at least 2 people in the city of Tel Aviv again today. It's more than likely another Islamic State attack within the region. We do know that there has been a large escalation in violence from the Islamic State within the region. And so we actually have a couple of videos coming out from that terror attack earlier. So let's go ahead and give it a watch. No one has yet taken responsibility for the attack in Tel Aviv. The last time it was both Islamic State cells that did commit the attacks. However, at this point, no one has taken credit for those terror attacks that happened tonight, and we do not have any further information at this point. However, to kind of reverse things here, Israeli police were seen on CCTV footage of beating a Palestinian rather brutally during his arrest. We do not know the circumstances regarding the arrest itself and why he was being arrested, etc. However, it's pretty explicit that it's rather it's a little bit of police brutality going on here, so a little bit of excessive force. So let's go ahead and take a look.
فاهم انت شو صار؟ لح كل الراجل ورجعوا راحوا جابوا رياض فاهم؟ بس بعدين نجيب البوز اصلا نجيب البوز ليش؟ صبروا لنا هذا يروح مخالفات كمان النسوان كان مخالفات عند البنك لنا خير كسب لنا خير ويعملوا مخالفه لنا خير والله خلص هذا بني بمس شو لو انا والله حبيت بخلت عليها هاي والله
So as you can see, one, it's a pretty intense takedown there. It looked rather, but he only had about 4 to 6 officers on him. And then, as you can see, while he was there on the ground, he was getting hit in the side from what had appeared from one of the officers who just kept hitting him in the side over and over again. So little bit of brutality on the Israeli side. We do know that there are some pretty bad tensions and bad blood between Palestinians and Israelis. It's actually one of the only conflicts, when I was reading about the Human Rights Council today, the tensions between Israel and Palestine is actually the only explicitly mentioned current kind of conflict in human rights that is said that is stated within the charter for the UN Human Rights Council when it was created in 2006. That's how bad it is here. As we move over into Iraq, yet another attack in Diyala province. We saw recently what was possibly an Islamic State attack on an engineer in Diyala province. Today, at the Saad camp in Diyala, a fire broke out following an Islamic State attack that actually injured 8 service members. They used an IED and attacked the area, and the camp caught fire. However, that's not the only Islamic State attack. Of course, over here in Al-Anbar Governorate and Iraq, we saw that Islamic State militants attacked a group of militiamen, apparently either at their SUV or a checkpoint, and several were injured. We do not have a lot of details on that, as Al-Anbar province is a little bit kind of in the middle of nowhere in the desert. There's not a whole lot that we saw or that we've seen out of that. It's just what's being reported at this point. So a couple of Islamic State attacks. It did die down for a while. There was a pretty big lull in the Islamic State fronts across the region worldwide after their initial escalation of violence. And so with that, we go ahead and we move on into Iran. And this is actually something that ties between Iran and Afghanistan. The Taliban government, the Taliban's caliphate government, actually came out and announced today that it condemned the attack on the Shiite shrine in Mashhad, Iran. And this attack occurred by an Afghan national who ended up using a knife, and he ended up killing 2 individuals and injured another severely. He posted a video kind of criticizing and kind of damning the Shiite position in Islam and criticizing Shiites in general. And so we actually have that today where they were coming out and condemning basically the attack itself. They said that we do not believe in this kind of way of settling our differences. The Taliban, since they came to power, showed a rather trying to turn their cheek a little bit, turn to the other cheek and kind of show a good side to them. They seem to kind of have an interest in running an actual government that can cooperate with other nations in the world. They put some interesting good faith efforts during the initial evacuations. There has been reports that they are still doing very Taliban things. However, those reports are not very forthcoming. We know there's some resistance movements, but it seems that the Taliban are at least attempting to assimilate to the modern world, which is a really big step from the Taliban that we kicked out of power. So take that for what it is. And we're going to go ahead and move on into Afghanistan. And some pretty interesting things happening in Afghanistan today. The Taliban believe that the United States used a drone to strike a munitions and weapons depot inside of the country, north of Kabul. There is a couple of photos regarding this. It has not been confirmed by the United States or any coalition partner that this occurred. When we were pulling out of Afghanistan, we said that we still had that ability to still strike in areas that we needed to without necessarily putting ground forces there on the ground and putting service members in harm's way. So it is quite possible that this is something that the U.S. did. However, we do not here at TNN believe it is likely, but at this point, it's all up in the air, and we just have to wait and see. However, this would be actually the first strike. There's the base itself. This would be the very first strike conducted in Afghanistan since the U.S. withdrawal from the nation in 2021. In Nigeria today, we have the Islamic State actually once again released videos of the recent attacks that's been ongoing in the last couple of days. These are basically pretty much like compilations of the attacks they've been conducting in the Borno state of Nigeria. Many service members of the Nigerian military forces have been killed thus far. They have used suicide bombers. They've attacked convoys. And so there's pretty much what seems to be an ongoing offensive in the area by the Islamic State to an extent. And so we have a little bit coming out of there today on that. Got to get that 1990 Toyota Hilux in there. The best known bad guy truck in the world. then once again, it's just Islamic State militants being Islamic State militants. They're just waving their flag around, acting like they're all big and bad, and then waiting for the drone to strike them. And then in the United States, as I was talking about earlier, the United Nations voted in a 2/3 majority to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council. This is a pretty big step for the UN. It did not come without controversy, as from my understanding, only, I believe it was 93 nations actually voted in favor. Many abstained. I believe 54 abstained, and an additional, I believe, 23 voted on to object to the situation. This comes after the images coming out of Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin, Borodyanka have stunned the world. Leaders worldwide have taken even more aggressive stances. Countries, to an extent that weren't even they were trying to on the fence about the whole thing, have now started to make rather vocal statements against Russian aggression, Russian atrocities, especially because it has completely shocked the globe to its core. The images that have been broadcasted onto monitors and television screens worldwide have horrified us here at the New News, and and I know it has horrified many other people. When I work full time and I talk with them about their thoughts on the issue, and they're pretty horrified as well. So I kind of understand. I'm kind of getting this feeling that everyone's kind of in the same boat at this point. And a lot of countries that chose to abstain maintain relationships with Russia, but did not vote either way. They let it pass. So we do know that with some of these nations, there is starting to be a shift in ideologies from some sides. They can't openly back it, but they can let it happen, which is what seems to be many countries' takes when there's something a little bit controversial here. And finally, to wrap up tonight's news, we have the fact that astronomers discovered the furthest interstellar object from Earth today, and it is, so far that's ever been recorded. The interstellar body is approximately 13.5 billion light years from Earth, and it's called HD1. It is currently sitting at its size and scope, currently sits it at what's called a galaxy candidate, which means it isn't a full-fledged galaxy yet, but it will likely be so. Keep in mind it took 13.5 billion years for the light just to reach us at this point, so it's very possible that by now the HD1 is now probably a pretty full-fledged galaxy. However, we don't know. So, pretty interesting. We always try to end every day on either a good or an interesting note. We try and make it funny or something that's kind of cool going on. And we specifically look for something kind of cool going on because there's a lot of bad things happening in the world. A lot of the good things don't get reported on. It's very unfortunate. And it is kind of depressing when you're talking about world news and all you hear about is death and destruction and atrocities, Russia, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Islamic State attacks, Boko Haram, the fighting in Yemen. It gets depressing after a while. And so we always want to at least have some kind of good. And not only do we look for good, we try and do good things here. Once again, in the video description, if you take a look, there is donation links. You can go and check them out. Those are vetted by us. That money is going to go to help people throughout the world. If you want to support the war effort or the humanitarian efforts, check out the links in the description below. Once we get large enough to be monetized, every single stream is going to have a fundraiser attached to it. And that way we can raise money on every single stream that will go 100% to the organization to help people worldwide, regardless of the situation. Right now it's Ukraine, but in the next 6 months, it could be an issue with food insecurities in Ethiopia or the Congo. It could be a humanitarian crisis such as earthquakes in Haiti or malaria outbreaks in Thailand. We want to be able to do good worldwide, and we want to continue to be a force for good here on the internet, while also providing you with daily updates on the news. And so I hope everyone enjoyed. I hope that you will be joining us once again tomorrow for yet another daily update. The Fridays usually are a pretty big day for news. So hopefully we'll get a lot of information out tomorrow. If you could like and subscribe, it really helps us. You can also join our Discord community. The link is in the description below as well. So you can stay up to date with what's going on when we are going live, which is usually about 10 p.m. Eastern Time or 9 p.m. Central Time. And you can also check out, we have areas for different regions of the world for media and discussions, and there's even not safe for work locations, so you can see some of that nitty-gritty stuff we can't necessarily show on the stream, but you can still see and understand what's going on there. If you need a laugh, there's a meme channel there too, or you can just talk in general. So go ahead, check us out, join us there. We'll be happy to have you. I even jump in there and talk a little bit and find some interesting stuff from there. Even some of the stuff that gets posted on the Discord goes in the stream every once in a while. So if it's good enough. So we'll go ahead and end it there. I hope you'll join us tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. I hope you and your family remain safe. And we hopefully will see you again in the next roughly 24 hours. So that way we can get back and give you another daily update on what's going on. My name is Paul from the New News, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night, and bye.
Слава Україні!